Good morning, everyone. Welcome to lesson 6 of the movement, the lockdown lesson. The lockdown movement lessons that we're running a new series of. The intention with this series, I think, as it was with the first series that I did, was really kind of looking at ways that we can help ourselves during the situation that we're in. Good morning. There's specific. I mean, here in the UK, we're in a lockdown, which means we're limited in terms of the movement that we can make, and that obviously has an effect on us, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. So these lessons really are kind of designed with that in mind. They're very gentle. I'm not doing anything extreme. But what it is just a way to kind of bring our attention back to a kind of simpler thing, not the outside world, not what's going on around us, bringing it back inwards to something more simple, which is just simple movement. So hopefully you're finding that useful. Today's lesson is going to be a classic Feldenkrais lesson called the pelvic clock. If you've had any engagement with Feldenkrais in your life, you've probably done this lesson. It's something that is kind of a major part of the method in some way. And one of the reasons for that is because there's a lot of focus on how important the pelvis is to our overall movement. So hopefully today's lesson will provide some insight into this lesson for you, but also just hopefully get you in touch with your pelvis if that's something that you're less in touch with. I know that this is a funny subject for some people. I don't find it so. Maybe it's because I've studied, anatomy, studied Feldenkrais, engaged with this stuff for a good many years. I don't find it an uncomfortable subject, but some people do. And some people as well find it uncomfortable to approach it in themselves. So if that's you, just take it easy. Don't push anything. Treat this as an initial investigation, and see how you get on. Any comments throughout the lesson, please drop them in the chat. It's great if people want to say hi if they're watching. If you haven't subscribed to StreamYard, I don't know if subscribed is the right word. I can't see your names, so if you want to just drop your name down as well, that would be great. So let's start with the lesson. So if you find a comfortable position to sit in, for this lesson, you're going to need to be sitting forward. It could be on the edge of the chair, but what's important is that you're sitting on your sitting bones. And my handy little guy here is going to be a useful demonstration model that's today. So these bones at the bottom of the pelvis, okay, they're called the ischiums, or the sitting bones is the more kind of common term for them, the common name. And this is what we sit on. So as we sit, there's this bony structure that actually supports our body. The force travels down through the spine into the pelvis and down into these sitting bones. So it's really an important point to think about initially. I'll leave him there. Okay, so once you've found a comfortable sitting position, what I'd like you to do is very gently just see if you can rock backwards. Hi, Adam. Good morning. What time is it? If you're in Austria or Australia? I'm not sure which one that is. If it's Australia, I wonder what the time is. Hi, Louise. Good morning. So very gently, I'd like you just to roll the pelvis slightly backwards, very slightly backwards, so that you feel the movement kind of moving back on the sitting bones, almost like you're rolling the pelvis back, and you can feel the weight transferring to the back of the sitting bones. So we just do this to start off with, just to feel that, what's your initial movement capacity with the pelvis. And as you do this, as you roll your pelvis backwards, notice what's happening. 9 p.m. Okay, that's not too bad. Notice what's happening with your torso. As you roll your pelvis slightly backwards, does your torso change its position? If you imagine that, you're facing something with your chest, as you roll your pelvis backwards, does what you're facing change? So just do this very comfortably, very gently. Just kind of an initial exploration, okay? All right, so stop that. And then what I want you to do is to rock the pelvis forwards. Rocking the pelvis forwards. You're rocking the pelvis again, it's just rolling over the sitting bones so that you feel that the pelvis is slightly tilting forwards and then coming back to the middle. And just do that a few times. And again, notice like what changes in the rest of your body. Notice how your lower back responds. Notice what direction your chest is pointing. Tilting the pelvis slightly forwards. And all the time as you're doing these lessons, just gently think about your breathing. Or try not to let the movement interfere with your breathing. Good. All right, so if we think about a clock, if you think that you're sitting on a clock, and I don't have a clock to demonstrate with, if you think that you're sitting on a clock and the front of the clock is 12 o'clock and the back of the clock is 6 o'clock, okay? So it's like you're looking down at the floor and there's a clock beneath. When you're tilting the pelvis forwards, that's 12 o'clock. When you're tilting the pelvis backwards, that's 6 o'clock, okay? So now just go between these two positions on the clock, 12 and 6, very gently tilting your pelvis through the kind of the linear aspect of the clock. Again, notice your breathing. And also maybe you can feel that as you come forwards, there's something different that happens with your abdomen. And as you come backwards, there's something different that happens with your abdomen. If you keep your abdomen tight when you come forwards, it's really going to restrict your capacity to tilt your pelvis forwards. So see if you can relax your abdomen and kind of fill out your belly as you tilt your pelvis forwards. And then in some way, as you're tilting your pelvis backwards, the abdomen is drawing back inwards. So there's this kind of like expansion and contraction happening in the abdomen that helps kind of free up the movement of the pelvis. Good, I'll just let you do that for a minute or so. Thinking like in terms of the clock itself, if you're doing the movement and you're feeling what's happening for you, can you feel that your pelvis is going in an exactly straight line between 12 and 6? Or does it veer off at certain points in the kind of movement? As you go backwards, does it go more towards 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock? As you go forwards, does it go more towards 11 or 1 o'clock? You know? So there's this kind of like, we think about things in terms of symmetry, but actually the body is not symmetrical and our movement pattern is going to be unique. So as you go through this movement, taking the pelvis forwards and taking the pelvis backwards, just see how your pelvis responds. See what movement you are making. Good. Okay, and take a little rest from that. And now, normally this lesson is done in lying down, and that gives you a slightly different kind of access to the pelvis because of the bowl shape at the back of the pelvis. But what I want to do just briefly is kind of do a little bit of anatomy of the pelvis. So we've looked at these two sitting bones here. And then you've got the two iliums, which are these kind of big elephant ears or the wings of the pelvis. And then at the front of the pelvis, you've got the pubic bone. Okay, so these three structures are what makes up the pelvis. And you've got all three on each side, the wing of the pelvis, the ischium, and the pubic bone. Okay, so in some way, if I kind of hold that, it's kind of ball shaped. So we've kind of got this aspect where we can roll backwards, we can roll forwards, we can roll to the side and to the side. Okay. I hope that stuff's interesting to you guys. I don't know if it is. So what I want you to do now is very gently take your or make a movement to take your pelvis over to 9 o'clock. Okay. And just do that movement a few times. So go from the middle to 9 o'clock. So what you're doing now is you're tilting your pelvis over in this direction, tilting your pelvis over in this direction and coming back to the middle. And again, it might not be a straight line. To get to 9 o'clock, you may kind of go like this, but don't worry about it. That's just the shape of the pelvis. Take it slowly. Feel for yourself, what's happening in the rest of your body as you're taking your pelvis over to 9 o'clock. How does your chest shape change? What happens in your abdomen? What happens in your head? There's something there's some effect being created by these various movements, and it's really good just to bring a bit of attention to it. Good. And then try the movement to the right. So go to 3 o'clock. Take your pelvis over to 3 o'clock. Again, you're kind of tilting the pelvis over. Tilting it over. Back to the middle. And is one side easier than the other? Can you feel that you are more capable taking your pelvis to the right than you were to the left, or vice versa? I didn't mention at the beginning, but if you want, you can have your eyes closed. If you want, you can have your eyes open. It doesn't really matter. The eyes closed kind of reduces some of the sensory input that we're getting, and that can make us slightly more sensitive. I was reading something this morning where they did tests on people's ability to taste coffee. And if the room was noisy, it affected our sense of taste. So you think that, any other information that we're getting in some way reduces our ability to sense something else. Good. And then move between 3 and 9. Move all the way across. And again, because we're sitting, it might be a kind of arc trajectory. It's not going to be a directly straight line. It would be unnatural. In some way, you might feel that you're kind of passing towards 6 o'clock as you go from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So let's just do that. Can you take the pelvis slightly backwards and go through from 3 o'clock round to 6 o'clock? Sorry, that was 9. 9 to 6 o'clock, and then to 3 o'clock. And just see if you can kind of explore that movement, okay? So it's like the back edge of the clock. And this is a good moment to check if you're breathing and that you're doing it at a pace that it's not sped up because you find it difficult. So if you're finding something difficult, we have a couple of techniques. Human beings have a couple of techniques. We either hold our breath or we speed up to get through it quicker. See if you can keep breathing. See if you can slow it down a little. Good. Think about the hours of the clock. So as you're moving now, see if you can identify. So each hour from 9, coming round the clock to 6, going round the clock to 3. See if you can identify each hour as you go round. So from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, and then continue round to 7, 8, and 9. Good. Just take your time, explore it. The more you do this movement, the more attention you give it, the smoother the movement becomes. And that's a really good thing for your movement patterns in general. This kind of relationship with what we would call in martial arts, the center of our power, the pelvis, it's really good to have that coordinated with the rest of the body. Good. All right, let's take a little rest. And just go back to making the movement between 6 and 12. Just go back to making the movement between 6 and 12 and see if anything's changed in your ability to make that movement. Good. And now what I want you to do is, instead of heading towards 12, I want you to head towards 1 o'clock. So if the hours of the clock are going round, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, head to 1 instead of 12. And on the way back, we're going to make this a linear movement and go to 7 o'clock. So between 1 o'clock and 7 o'clock. So again, it's a linear movement. We're going between one point in the clock and another point, but we're going slightly off center. We're not going towards towards 12, and we're not going towards 6. Hopefully that's clear. So just do that movement a few times. Keep breathing. Good. And then change and go to 11 o'clock, and 5 o'clock. And notice any difference you feel kind of going in this trajectory than you felt in going in that trajectory. Does one feel more familiar or easier? Good. Okay, and then from 11 o'clock, move to 10 o'clock. So we're going to go that direction now. So go towards 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Take your time. Really kind of give it your attention. Be patient with it. It's like the learning process. The body needs time to pick up the signals that you're giving to it. So, as we do this lesson, if you give your attention to it, if you slow down, if you're kind of gentle with the movement, it's giving you the best opportunity for your body to learn something new, to give it the potential for change. Good. And from 10 o'clock, see if you can go from 9 to 3. This is what we were doing earlier. And see if you can make it a linear movement this time, so you're not going around the back of the clock. Good. And then a few times go from 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock. 8 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And then the last one we did at the beginning, go from 7 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Again, feeling that your abdomen can be free as you do this movement. So the forward aspect of the movement, whether that's to any of the forward hours of the clock, if you can let your abdomen expand into the movement. Good. And then just begin to pick random hours. So from any of the hours on the front of the clock, whether it's 9, 10, 11, 12, or 1, 2, 3, just play with the movement. Pick 1 hour, go forwards towards it, and then go to the opposite edge of the clock. So if you're going towards 10, you would go towards 4 at the back. If you go towards 2, you would go towards 8 at the back. If you go towards 12, you would go towards 6 at the back, and just kind of play with it. See if you can develop a little bit of freedom with this movement. Good. Okay, and take a little rest. Take a rest. Just for a moment, if you haven't got your eyes closed, just close your eyes and just bring your attention to the movement of your abdomen as you breathe. See if you can feel the moment that the breath starts to move. And see if you can allow the muscles of the abdomen to really kind of relax and allow the movement of breathing. Good. As you do that, with the in-breath, see if you can again go towards 12. With the out-breath, see if you can come towards 6. So filling up the belly as you breathe in, rocking the pelvis forwards towards 12 o'clock. As you breathe out, rocking the pelvis backwards towards 6. This is a way of slowing down your breathing as well as slowing down the movement. Okay, great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the front edge of the circle. Okay, so I want you to go from 9 o'clock, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. And then 3, 2, 1, 12, 11, 10, 9. And just see if you can kind of explore that forwards aspect of the circle. Think about kind of the structure of the pelvis and how with each little variation in movement, the pelvis is doing something slightly different. Okay, so with each, as you're kind of going around the clock, you imagine that the structure of the pelvis is kind of going through lots of different variations. And that's having some effect on the spine, connected in with the pelvis, having some effect on the ribs, connected in with the spine, and you might even notice it up at the head as well. Good. Take a little rest from doing the forward aspect of the movement. Take a little short pause. Just let yourself kind of really or feel the difference in your sitting now from the beginning of the lesson. For me, even though I've been teaching, I've been doing it at the same time, I really feel like I'm sitting in a different way, kind of more comfortably, more settled on the chair. Good. And now what I'd like you to do is begin to go all the way around the circle. All the way around the circle. And pick a direction. Pick a direction. It doesn't really matter which way. Pick a direction and see if you can identify in the movement each single hour. So you're not rushing it. You're not missing any hours. You're taking the pelvis round in this kind of circular movement all the way around the clock. Next weekend, I'm going to have the pleasure of speaking to sort of a prominent Feldenkrais practitioner who's been doing it for a really long time, Lavinia Plonker. And I didn't tell her when I was speaking to her initially, but I've got this recording of hers called Pelvic Power as a CD set. And I've had it in my car for the last 6 or so years. And it's like the opposite channel from my radio. So occasionally I'll press the button by mistake and her voice will come on and it will be this kind of exploration of the movement of the pelvis. And I don't know, I've just kind of got really kind of familiar with it. And so I think that, I don't know if there's a point to that story. I think maybe the point to that story is that it's really worthwhile to think about the pelvis. It's a really important part of our movement, and it's a really important part of our body as well. So taking some time to do this lesson is a good thing. That's what I meant. Okay, and if you haven't already, go in the opposite direction. Again, seeing if you can feel your breathing and the freedom of the abdomen as you're going around the circle. So the abdominal muscles are kind of free to move in all these dimensions. They're contracting at certain points, they're expanding at certain points. And they've kind of got this freedom or this softness to allow the pelvis to move in the ways that it needs to. If you were to hold your abdominal muscles tight and try and do this, the movement would be very restricted. So it's really kind of a key part of this. Good. All right, and then just go back to the initial movement. Go back to the initial movement going between 12 and 6. And just notice how that movement has changed. Is there a different sense of, I don't know, range isn't quite the right word, but is there a different sense in your ability to take your pelvis backwards? And there are a different sense in your ability to take your pelvis forwards. So what you can see by kind of exploring more aspects of the way that the pelvis can move, it's like it gives permission for the pelvis to move more dynamically than it was at the beginning of the lesson. Great. So just take a moment to stop the movement, kind of come to the middle between 6 and 12. And just notice how you're sitting and kind of how you feel in yourself. I'd love to hear from you in the comments how you found the lesson. If anyone's watching at a later point, it's always great to hear the feedback. This is the first day this week that I'm teaching. I'm going to be teaching every day this week at 11. And I think I'm going to continue this theme of the pelvis and maybe the legs kind of joining in with the pelvis, because I did the shoulders and the arms last week. So it makes sense to me to kind of to move on to this as the next subject. If there's anything that people would like particularly addressing related to the pelvis, please let me know in the comments. I have a full hour-long Feldenkrais class this evening at 8 o'clock UK time. Adam probably will be in bed by then. But if anyone wants to make that, if they can, then that's 8 till 9 UK time. Just drop me a message. And yeah, I think that's it. If you want to watch a replay, you can watch it in my Thoughtful Movements community group. If you want to share the lesson, go to my Facebook page, which is www.facebook.com/thoughtful movements. Find the video, click like, click share, and you can share that to whoever you want. If you're in the group and you're watching the video, because the group's private, you wouldn't be able to share it. Okay, thank you very much. If you enjoyed it, if you want to send me a little donation, there's a link in the description. And I think that's it. All right, I will be back tomorrow. I'll see you then. Take care. Bye.